Okay, here's a quick overview of the basics of Tinkercad and kind of what you need in order to kind of get you started on how to design your 3D model that you guys want to design. So the part in the middle here is called the work plane. This is similar to the size of what your 3D model will actually print on our printers downstairs. So you're going to keep this the same size. You can zoom in and out of it by, if you have a mouse, you can scroll in and out. And I think on the touchpads on your Chromebooks, you can zoom in by spreading your fingers out or closing them. You can also do that, freshmen. You guys can do that actively on your screens. You can also come over here and hit the zoom in button or zoom out. So if you're trying to look at something and you've got it in the middle, you could zoom in really close to see what the size is. Just for an FYI, the grid that's on here, everything's in millimeters. So you can change the grid. I would not do that because it's going to make it bigger. So you want to keep it at 1 millimeter. Because I'm going to set these up on the printer in millimeters. Basic things. So everything over here, this is the different ways you can add shapes in. There's a ton of different basic shapes. There's a way to add text. So if you look at the sample one that the sub has, I have text written on the atom that I printed out that you can add on there. And there's all these different other basic shapes that you can do. There's some other ones, text and numbers. You can kind of sort through here. Those are for making little creatures, which we're not doing. There's other little connectors, and you can kind of just search through there and see if there's anything you need to use. Pretty much basic shapes will get you going. So if I wanted to create a box, what you do is you click on it and you can come and drag it over and put it in the middle of your work plane. Now, there's a couple of ways you can change these objects. So you can come to the corners, and in this case, I can change the size of my box. And all of these little numbers on the side, so the one to the right, see how it's going to 21, 29, and then the ones up here will be going to 65, whatever. So if you want to keep this a cube, lovely little math students, we are going to keep it at 61 by 61 so that we still have our 60 by 60. And this is a little finicky, so I can't even get it to do it perfect. Oh gosh. You can also do this. If you can't change it, you can come in and do 60. So this would be 60 millimeters by 60 millimeters. And then if you accidentally unclick your shape, you can click back on it. This one in the middle of any of your shapes is how you change the height. So I can make this taller or shorter. So like if you wanted to do your base of something, you could make it shorter. If you wanted this to be an object, you could make it taller. And you can change some of these other boxes. Those are the main things. If you want to rotate it, you can. So you can kind of come up with those little arrows are. Oops. And kind of rotate it that way. Most of these you're going to want to keep straight. And then you can rotate it around. So depending on which way, so if you want this at an angle, we'll do that. As you're making your objects, if you're trying to figure out like, okay, how tall did I make this? How wide did I make it? So this is a good view kind of for the basics, but over in this left-hand corner, there's this little cube. If you notice as I move along, a little blue line comes up. This is the way you can change your view. So I can look at it from the top, like if I was looking at it directly from above. So you can see I've rotated our box. I can also come back here, click that side again. That's our little angled view. I can click front. So this would be like if you were standing at the 3D printer and looking right where it was printing and how tall this is. So in this case, we made this box 40 millimeters tall. If I want to make it a base, so if you kind of want to make like that atom and make something flat, I made it 1 millimeter, which is way too thin. You might want to do 5 millimeters, and that will give you a thick enough base that it's not too bad. The H and the text on my atom are printed at 6 millimeter heights. So that's probably about a good thickness. Other things, so if you want to go back, you can also go to the sides, left, right, but this is probably that main like angle between top and front is what you'll use for most of it, or if you're using the top. So then let's say if I wanted to add text on there, I could click the text thing, come drag that over, and then I can type in like Miss Durridge. Okay, obviously that is too big for my square. You can also change the color. So see how the red was hard to see on top of that? So I can come around, and if I want this to be white, I can do that. And then same thing, you can just click and drag. It's kind of like on any other program you've done. You can kind of click and drag things. And then if you want to drag your whole item, and you kind of click in the middle. So it's kind of like on Google Docs when you're moving an item around. And you can move base. So if I go back to my text, same thing. If I go to an angle, I can change the height. Right now we're at 14, so maybe I don't want my words that high. I can kind of go a little lower and see at 4 millimeters, which is lower than our 5 millimeter thick thing, it disappears. So 5 would be the same, but you're not going to really be able to see it. And if you want it raised up, you can do like maybe 3 or 4 millimeters above what's below it. All right, and then if I want to check to see how much that is, so see, I can see it a little bit, and there you go. Those are the basics. You guys can kind of play around. You can add other things. If you want to add a sphere, you can add that in. I will tell you that one's going to be a little harder because we're going to have to add in some supports for that, because when you try and print this, you have to be able to print in layers. So anything that's kind of hanging over by itself is hard to print. And we're going to have to add pieces in there. So you might want to try and make flat things for now. And then if we need to adjust them later, we can. But that's a way to add a sphere, and you guys can do that. I would make sure that all of your files are kind of all on the same thing. So you can add a sphere, and so that would give you a sphere that's kind of sticking up out of the top a little bit. Okay, and then I can make that shorter if I want to by this. And you can move it around. The other thing is, especially physical science, if you want to add an electron, but that's actually kind of, oh, you can delete things too if you mess up. I would add the half spheres because you can add them on top. And again, I can change the color so I can see it better. And then I want to see, okay, that looks like a good spot for it. Oops. Oh, and if you click the undo button or you hit Control Z, you can undo your move. So if you're like, I didn't want to do that, you can change it. Then apparently you can rotate it that way too. So if we're looking at this, my sphere is about that high, so that's a good for an electron. So that's 10 tall because it's counting from the bottom. So we got 5 here, so that means it's 5 above. So I can make that really tall, or I can just make it just above our thing. All right, so that's what you guys can kind of play around with. See what you can come up with. And then once you guys make your file, go up here and share it with me. And obviously make sure you did it at first with your partner, shared it up here, and then you guys can do some stuff there. And kind of play around and see if you guys can come up with anything cool you can show me when I come back from my conference.